The new channel. The new channel. Hashtag TNC Now.
The views, opinions, and insights expressed in the following shows are those of the host, producers, guests, and viewers. They do not necessarily reflect the position of the channel. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome. Hello and welcome to the new channel. Our passion transforms a community that sees all things new. I am Nato Agbayani and I'm streaming live from Quezon City. Good evening. Welcome to Para sa Bayan on TNC. Welcome back. You're still watching the new channel here, Para sa Bayan. This is our Season 2, Episode 18. So today, or tonight, we have a special guest, a good friend. He is the President of the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement and also the Chairperson of Education for Life, or ELF Foundation. And of course, who can forget, he used to be the Director General also of TESDA. I think that was during the time of the President era. So without any further ado, we'd like to bring you Ed, or Edicio Dela Torre as he is known. So Ed, please, welcome to Para
Yes,
sa Bayan.
good evening, Nato. Maraming
Evening.
salamat for inviting me. Is my voice clear?
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, welcome. You are, I think, in Ortigas Center, no?
Yes,
Currently.
I'm here. I was telling you, I'm on a staycation with my first grandchildren, twins pa naman.
Twins.
And that's the request. 14-year-old and they're taller than me.
Wow. Talagang ano, no? I think that's ibang klase talaga ang food. Mga nutrition ng mga bata ngayon, ibang klase. Anyway, let me ask you, so I've known you for quite some time. Sabi ko nga, in today's terms, you are my lodi or idol, sabi nga nila. Itong mga viewers natin, they don't know, but Ed has been in the movement, no, for really nation building and different advocacies for so long. So I have seen him in action many times over. And I think my brother was also nakatrabaho mo din si Rene. So
Yes,
sa
of course.
I think sa Institute IPD ba? I'm not sure. Pepe or
Pepe, Popular Education.
Yeah.
Yes.
Popular Education for People's Empowerment. So that was the name of the NGO before.
Yes.
So Ed, please tell us more about your life story.
Well,
it's very interesting. Kaya the viewers should listen.
Yeah, it's well, first of all, I'm I turned 79 years old last July. So pretty old na. So I will not talk about that long life. Siguro what I'd like to talk about is in 86, no? Post-EDSA, because you're talking of nation building eh. Kasi nung panahon ng after 86, of course, like many others, I was a political prisoner during the time of the martial law regime.
Yes, that's
So I
right.
spent 9 years in different prisons. So,
Wow.
sabi ko nga kay Professor Clarita Carlos, I met her a month ago, National Security Advisor. Sabi ko, Prof, you want an advice on ano? Because my expertise is comparative prison architecture. Ang rami kong napanggaling ng mga jails. So we laughed about it because when I was released in 86 and I would be introduced, and that's how I would introduce myself to you now. I was introduced as triple extra kasi ex-priest because I used to be a priest ordained in
Okay.
1968.
Triple X, ha? Okay.
Yeah, but was laicized in 87. Sabi ng simbahan, iba na yata ang bukasyon mo, masyado kang aktivista eh. So ex-priest and then ex-prisoner, as I said, I was put in prison
Yes.
twice. And then ex-rebel. Kasi with Barcelo, I went as part of the underground. Except sabi ko
Underground,
nga,
yes.
it's not very good. Gusto 2 beses agad akong nakulong at nahuli. But afterwards, I added a fourth because naging TESDA nga ako. So ex-government official na rin ako. And when they asked me, sige, puro past mo yan eh. Former. Ano ka, positively, if you had to describe yourself. And that's what I said. Sige, if I had only enough budget for one word on my tombstone, I would prefer to simply be called an educator. Sabi lang, no, educator, maging teacher ka. I said, yeah, but to some extent broader. Like, I want an educator is one who helps other people learn in different ways. Sometimes by teaching, sometimes by not teaching, sometimes by just facilitating. So I still
An
see myself
enabler.
as that, huh?
An enabler. Yeah.
Yeah, enabler, yung facilitate, no? Kaya
Yes.
kasama yung popular education. That time nga when we were promoting this the issue of grassroots education, popular education, I think isang Ifugao from the Cordillera sabi, sige na, Ed, dati ikaw Father Ed, ngayon Pop Ed ka na lang, popular educator. So that's the broad sweep of my background. But because you asked me to talk about rural development, I just realized now that when I was a seminarian, my first involvement really on social issues other than theology was with the Federation of Free Farmers. So agrarian reform agad at rural development. And I didn't realize that it's been one of the themes in my different forms of social
That's,
engagement. May bias ako talaga for the rural, for the agricultural. Even though most of the time I'm living naman in the city and in various issues of also governance. So last year when the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement asked me to take over the presidency kasi after 86 the PRRM, which was by the way established 1952, panahon pa ni Magsaysay.
yeah, 70
But
years.
it went into doldrums during martial law. 86, nung na-release si Boy Morales, si Gani Serrano, they took over. So si Boy was one of the first presidents. Later, si Bobby Tanyada. And the last one was Gani Serrano, but he died 3 years ago. So they asked me, you want to take over? Sige, okay lang. Then I realized parang full circle ako, no? FFF, ngayon PRRM. PRRM was established in, I think, 52.
1952.
FFF was established in 54. Para bagang ang common element dyan, the Hook Rebellion was just crushed, suppressed, no? Panahon ni Magsaysay, no?
Yes.
And there were people, you would call them maybe part of liberal thinking, who say, look, meron namang dahilan kung bakit nagkaroon ng rebellion or armed rebellion. Hindi lamang ideological dyan. It's because may grounds for it. Poverty, injustice, and all that. So they said, if we don't want the revolution, we don't want Marxism, we don't want communism, we don't want arm, but to prevent that or to remove the reasons for that, we should have reforms. And ang idea nga nila, in that gap left open by the suppression of the radical left, they were promoting more reform-oriented organizations. So the Federation of Free Farmers, the Federation
FFW.
of Free Workers, and the same thing, interesting yung kwento ng PRRM. I didn't know so much about it. Ang rural reconstruction pala as a concept, nagsimula sa China. A professor, James Yen, is a Chinese but who studied abroad, you know. So may pagka-liberal thinking niya. And he came home to China and he realized, my gosh, grabe ang poverty and ignorance ng rural population. And that time may bakbakan na nangyari sa China, warlords and Japanese.
Yes.
And so he promoted the concept of rural reconstruction almost as like a third way, Reform lang naman, pero seryoso. Education against ignorance, health against disease, livelihood against poverty, and some form of self-governance, no?
Mhm.
I was told, and I don't know if it's true, baka naman marites lang ito. But it's nice to believe it, that during that time, even Mao Zedong raw attended one of the seminars of James Yen. But then, basically again, he said, that's too slow. Kailangan mas mabilis, more radical. And so he launched what eventually was the Chinese Communist Revolution, which won in 49. Eh, nung nanalo na yun, siyempre, James Yen felt, China is not a place for me. So he left China, went to Taiwan, and then when he went to Taiwan, said, why don't I cross over to the Philippines? And here he met Conrado Benitez, other enlightened educators. And sila ang nagsimula ng Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement. But I would like to add very quickly that in the late 80s, siguro because consolidated na yung Communist Party in China, they looked at James Yen's work and said, he meant well. So they actually invited him back. And they welcomed him as one of the early pioneers on rural development, addressing rural issues in China. So interesting ang circle na yan. Sabi nga nila, yung bang pinasukan mo, Ed, na FFF at PRRM, ang unang sabi ng iba, counterinsurgency program yata yan because it came after the suppression of the hope. To some extent, it was that. But the idea was, it was not primarily to fight insurgency, but to fight the reasons why insurgents have an appeal. And that is the
root causes
and the backwardness of the rural areas. No? So it's a long, interesting cycle. I just realized now, nagsimula ako sa FFF as a young seminary priest. Ngayon, ayoko namang mamatay na too early, pero mukhang towards the end of my whatever life is given to me in this world, mukhang through the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement, mukhang ang posture ko at profile at involvement will still be rural development, which, by the way, interestingly, is a current and interesting challenge.
priority.
Yeah,
I mean, given the the issues that are the current issues like sugar, the lack of it, of course, rice, asin, and then in general the underproductivity of the agricultural sector. It only contributed very little to the entire country, and yet we are an agricultural country, and maybe much of the labor force is in the rural areas. Talagang and then even in the zona of President BBM, no, para bang there's this, ayokong interpret but there's this will to try and make something better out of the agricultural sector. And then even like us, I have friends in the technology sector that are really trying to push for enablers in terms of the supply chain, how it can
Correct.
be more efficient. Kasi talagang ano, 'di ba? When
Mhm.
when when I stayed as consultant for Alaminos, I think way back ilang years na ba? Matagal na. With the
Nani.
former DAR Secretary Nani, 'di
Oo.
ba? Parang ano eh, the general idea was really to aggregate the small land holdings. Kasi
Correct.
parang ano eh, hindi talaga productive eh. Rice is really impoverishing if it's done 5 hectares and below, no? So it has to be aggregated in some form. So what do you think are the challenges for rural reconstruction? I think there's so much to discuss, no? Pero maybe the top three in your head that you see as I mean priority areas where both government, private sector, and CSOs should come in.
Yeah, actually, kasi when you talk of rural, I think the first thing we have to address, which is this is a little bit more abstract, but I think it's important,
Yeah,
that we tend to think of, well, who doesn't like to develop? Nation building tayo eh. But the
yeah,
idea, parang masyadong dominant yung paradigm that to advance, to be progressive, is to go the urban industrial path, no?
mhm,
Urban industrial technology. And there's nothing wrong with that. Tama naman yun. But what happens when it gets too linear is that you should then, the sooner reduce the rural workforce, reduce the contribution of the rural to the overall GDP and GNP, rather than uh, having at least a significant percentage of the economy, of the workforce, uh, in rural, but modernized and developing. So
mhm,
I mentioned this because, interestingly, last year in 2021, the United Nations Division on Economic and Social Affairs issued an interesting report on, they called it Reconsidering Rural Development to Achieve Social Development. There's the tendency to think of the rural as simply the residual, yung hindi makaya ng urban industrial, yan ang rural. And sabi
residual,
lang, hindi pwede yun. You must have, it's like a two engines dapat yan,
right?
other than the issue of inequality and all that, no? And when I was reading that, I said, this is interesting. And then I was told, I don't know whether you've read him, a certain Professor Wen in China, a very interesting professor. He gave a talk, and he said, Xi Jinping has
Mm,
a 5-year plan on what he calls now rural revitalization, because the premise of the Chinese government is, look, we've been so export oriented, industrial in the coast. So okay, it attracted the people from the rural areas and it boomed. But then they
yes,
were saying two things. We will become vulnerable. What if in the conflict with the West and all that, they restrict our export markets, or they restrict our access to other development inputs, which is partly happening. What about our internal domestic market? So it was a very deliberate policy that we have to develop the internal domestic and rural market so that it can become a second market, just in case malesen yung external. I said it's a very strategic thinking that I was surprised to
yes,
hear about. And he said, look, they've invested trillions of yuans into infrastructure, roads and bridges. Pangalawa, electricity. And pangatlo, mahalaga, internet. So when we talk of rural development, we think immediately of agriculture. Fine. But
mhm,
basically, in the Chinese
context,
strategy, mahalaga yung infrastructure. I guess we
yes,
should add the fourth, which is financing, no? No?
yeah,
And I think in the Philippines, I don't know, the President Bongbong's ideas. It's not just a matter of, sige, let's give more attention to agriculture, but the tendency to equate rural with agriculture. In the United Nations paper, the idea is rural development includes what they call new urban centers, not the mega centers, but the advantages of the urban, but still based on rural and agriculture, closer to what they call the natural economy,
Mm.
unlike the urban, which is the built-up economy. So that for me is a first issue na
Yeah.
if always see the rural as parang kailangan niya ng ayuda, kailangan ng subsidy,
Oh,
hirap, or worse
it's the
before, kasi may insurgency yan kaya gano'n. Siyempre sabi nila, anyway, mahina na ngayon ng guerrillas, baka hindi na kailangan asikasuhin. I mean, if you see
parang
it in terms, rather than saan manggagaling ang growth natin? Will it
yeah.
only come from export processing zones, new urban industrial centers? Can this not be the other engine of growth, and will not only growth but producing and servicing one of our core needs, which is what? Food.
Yeah.
Pagkain. Kasi before, may idea sa, lalo na sa neoliberal thinking, food security, basta may pera, di bumili ka kahit sino.
Yeah.
Problema ngayon, lalo na nangyari nung pandemic, people are realizing,
May pera pero wala
ang uunahin ng ibang
walang
gobyerno,
food.
pakainin muna namin ang aming tao. Because sabi nga, sino ba nagsabi yun? Si Mao Zedong yata nagsabi noon na yung food is a national security issue. That's
Yes.
why I like yung statement ni Clarita Carlos, tinext ko siya, uy, maganda yung concept po na national security involves food security, hindi lamang military and geopolitical, no? And I
Yeah.
think it's true. The pandemic really made us
Taught us that,
literally
yes.
experience. May pera ka man, wala kang mabibiling pagkain, lalo na pag ayaw mo na ng processed at ayaw mo na ng delata, naghahanap ka ng fresh, healthy, and all that. So I think the centrality of food as a basic need, but not just food, in its full meaning, food security is accessibility, affordability, but also nutritious, healthy, sabi nga nung isa kong kaibigan, sabi, ang Diyos naman, hindi lang tayo gusto ibusog, gusto tayo malusog. Sabi ko,
Yes.
oo nga, pero pag ikay hirap na hirap, kahit na basta busog lang. So, I think that's the second, the centrality of food, which is related to not just agricultural development, but rural development. And the third, I like to mention, and this is a particular advocacy of mine, I learned it siguro 10 years ago lang.
Yes.
I was a consultant for a while with Secretary Alcalan, the Department of Agriculture. At kasabay ko noon, the head of the Bureau of Fisheries and Agricultural Aquatic Resources, si Attorney Asis Perez, gave a talk. Sabi niya, alam mo, masyado tayong land-centric, masyadong bias sa farmers. Walang masama yun. Pero paano yung fisher folk natin? And more important, sabi niya, alam mo Ed, when I go abroad in international conferences, Spain, Portugal, they declare themselves as maritime countries. Sabi niya, why don't we think of ourselves as a maritime and archipelagic nation? We have only 300,000 square kilometers of land, but we have 2.2 million hectares pala of square kilometers of square meters ba, square kilometers of water, inclusive economic zone, and that is a lot of resource. So nanggaling nga ako sa Negros Occidental, I visited the Fishers Organization na tinutulungan ng PRRM. Sabi sa akin ng mga babae, Kuya Ed, natawag, Kuya Ed, ang pagkain na hindi lang naman kanin, kailangan ng ulam. At ang ulam, ang pangunahing ulam ng Pinoy sa protein ay isda. Pero bakit hindi kami inaasikasong masyado? Puro farmer. O nga ako. Parang, kasi ang joke ko sa kanila, kasi ang problema ka ako, wala namang guerrilla sa mga ano, fisher folk. Nung unang address ng, ng gobyerno, hindi lamang yung kahirapan o injustice, kundi a threat of unrest and
Yes.
dissidence.
And,
So anyway, these are
oo.
some of the initial ideas, but the bottom line, which you already referred to, and which interestingly was mentioned by President Bongbong, is ang isang lumalabas talaga is we have to think now of food value chain, food
Yeah.
systems. Hindi na lamang, ikaw ay agriculture, production ka lang. Tapos dito sa market kung ano-ano. Dapat may link. And that's where papasok yung idea na there are some big companies, even intermediate ones, who are willing to source internally, even though more
Yes.
convenient sa kanila mag-import. Pero sabi nila, we cannot deal pa isa-isa. Pero hindi naman kami ang aggregator. Sana kayo ang tutulong mag-aggregate ng mga yan, no?
Right. Right.
Because we will deal only with on scale. So these are some of the issues that off the top of my head when you talk of
Yeah.
rural development and its challenges are right now parang occupying my mind. Kasi ang tanong ngayon sige, tumanda na tayo pareho nato, no? Nung tayo pareho bata, iniisip natin, dapat ganito, sana ganito. Parang halos utopian thinking, kaya pwede yan.
Yeah.
Pero ngayon sabi mo, ano kaya ang pwede talaga? Given the limitations we have, but also given what we still have. And hopefully, there are enough ideas and there are enough people with access to the decision makers, because the public sector is still a big sector, especially when it comes to rural development, para naman na yung public-private partnership or public-private and community partnership, makadevelop tayo ng systems based on specific priority crops, priority commodities na mahalaga. For example, one thing I was just recently talking with, we have the coconut levy. We have coconut. That's our single biggest billion-dollar export every year, no? Pero very low productivity at saka pag puro kopra lang ang baba ng value added. But there are new products, no? VCO, desiccated coconut, iba pa. And we have big companies, Franklin Baker, Peter Paul, who are doing that. Pero sabi nga nila, ay pag hindi na nagtanim at ng nyog ang mga magnyunyog, lagot kami. Pero hindi naman kami ang mag-aasikaso yan. Dapat tumulong dyan ang gobyerno at kayo mga NGOs and all that. Tapos willing kami mag-link sa inyo. Pero dapat marami kayo, hindi yung pa isa-isa. So something similar has to happen in different crops and different commodities. Paano natin magagawa yung kombinasyon ng mga tulad natin, mga activist background na mag-o-organize ng mga small producers, pero rather than binabangga mo lang yung malalaki, denouncing them na kayo puro profit takers lang at adding to the, maghanap ng, is there some sort of collaborative or complementary roles between
enterprises,
producers, and the big ones, plus buzzword naman ng gobyerno ngayon, yung the missing middle, the SMEs that will link the primary producers and the bigger larger corporations, no?
Yeah. Nako, Ed, grabe, kalahati pa lang tayo ng show. Ang dami ng discussion. In fact, I think yung if I were to paraphrase it, one is it's really maybe it is good now to do systems thinking. We are looking at the entire country. When we do nation building, parang gano'n na, of course, it's not just production. Teka, ang agriculture ba yun lang mga palayan at mga we were recently guests of Mayor Ahong Chan in Talis, I think in Lapu-Lapu City. So we went to this island barangay, and ang industry nila doon are production ng seaweed. And the people are really yung ang haba ng shoreline, so doon sila nagpo-produce ng seaweed. Ang laki ng kinikita nila, and to think there's so many products that we can produce out of seaweed as well, di ba? Isa yun. There are yung sinasabi mo commodities and then the entire supply chain, how we will handle it. So parang ano kasi pag may mindset mo na agriculture is planting rice and ano, 'di ba? People and institutions would now have to shift their mindsets as well. At the end of the day, it's really systems eh. And then we're looking at possibilities of eventually, no COVID, 'di ba? Ang daming na-push na tama ka, may pera pero hindi makabili. Walang food production. So how are we going to be resilient? And then in some reading materials, the causes daw are, of course, the Philippines is always in the hazard map. Ang daming yung resilience. Parang kailangan alisin na natin yung yung word na resilient kasi hindi nakakatulong. Bagyo ka lang, Pilipino kami. So what, 'di ba? At the end of the day, the storms will come and it will destroy crops, and it will no amount of crop insurance or anything that the government does. We really need to produce somewhere else, 'di ba? Or produce high value commercial crops or ano. Parang there was this farmer, he was producing French beans. Why are you producing French beans? Kasi for every square meter I sell it versus other crops, it's 400 per kilo. Noon pa yun siguro now it's 500 per kilo. So you will realize that at the end of the day, it's really value creation also in agriculture, and the total picture of infra, tama yun, merong internet, all those things will contribute. Sensors, sensing the soil, sensing the water, I think I was with former government. Well, now I'm currently with government pa rin as a local but previously in the national government, di ba, part of the when we were with the Office of the Presidential Advisor for Political Affairs, very critical yung mga ganong policy making na we really need to create the institutions. I learned that from you. Establish the institutions where this can be enabled. So anyway, Ed, we've come to that point where we are in the middle of the show. Imagine mo, ang iksi-iksi ng panahon. We need mga 3 hours just for this. So we will go right into a very short break, and later we'll deepen the discussion. I think this is one of our best shows. Ed, we'll go right into a short break and then we'll come back. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a while. Thank you.
Juan Lu and his puppets face to face with special guests Makata Tawanan, Jess Box, and the Lunaria Marionette Show.
Alam mo, Nicolong, kung wala ako, hindi ka magsasalita. Alam mo, Tito Anlo, kung wala ako, nagsasalita ka nag-isa. Kung wala ako, wala kang masusuot. Kung wala ako, wala kang nakakain.
October 30, Sunday, 7 p.m. at the La Verdad Auditorium in Apalit, Pampanga. Buy your tickets now and see you soon, face to face.
Hello and welcome back. You're still watching Para sa Bayan here on TNC. But don't forget to watch also our different shows. So, all right, the new channel is an online alternative and, of course, new media platform of online shows for people on the go. Please watch all our shows as seen on the screen. Imagine having your own show, your own playlist, your own content, but we make it easier for you. Also, TNC aims to transform the lives of our viewers through engaging, authentic, and original content. Our channel is a responsible global 24/7 platform that showcases the Filipino talent, global influencers, cultural intelligence, and ingenuity. Don't forget also, you can watch our show via replay or live on Facebook, YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram. You can listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Just search TNC Now. Don't forget also to watch our show every Saturday, 9 p.m. here on Para sa Bayan. For sponsorships, please email now at thenewchannel.com or send us a DM. Enjoy these life-changing shows because we made them specially for you. So we're back. So we're bringing in our guest today, Ed Dela Torre, of course. Hi, Ed.
Hi.
Parang kulang talaga. How we will deepen the discussion, ang ganda na ng discussion. So, I heard that there's a lot of people watching us right now. Mukhang nalaman nila ikaw yung guest, kaya marami nanood. So anyway, so we discussed kanina that of course the history of PRRM, and then of course Dr. Chen, if I'm not mistaken, and then how China also learned from him after so many years of revolution, no? And I think the next step is, you were saying, infrastructure, kasi karamihan 'di ba sa China, it all went to the side where Shanghai is, Guangzhou, etc., and the rest of the rural, kaya binuo nila yung what's this road?
Yeah.
Yung Belt Road.
So,
this very ambitious project they also want to have, but thinking like China, for example, and thinking centralization somehow. Kasi dati we were allergic to centralization, di ba? The government was, but come to think of it, there are some utilities, especially food security at this point in time, that somehow need to be centralized, and government needs to really step up in a way. What do you think about nationalizing or some of the functions like supply chain, for example, for agriculture, or rural development. They were doing that for ICT, yung alternate development centers, no, or gateways. But that's why that's where the airports are being placed in the same, parang parallel with the tourism industry. But what do you think for agriculture? Iniisip ko mamaya pa natin discuss yung recommendations pero it seems that we can already, we're at that point where we can actually discuss it now, no? Parang what do you think? Should we centralize? Should we, what would you recommend the government as well as the other players, the other stakeholders like MSMEs, also CSOs and the academe?
Well, siguro, interestingly, by the way, Nato, one of the former board members of the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement was Ambassador Chito Santa Romana, no?
Yes.
And
I attended his PRRM.
we used to get parang off-the-record briefings from him, no? Because we were
Yes.
curious nga, ano ba nangyari talaga dyan, Chito? And sabi nga niya, alam mo, Ed, yung ilang ginagawa nila are similar sa gustong gawin natin, no? Except doon, it's state-led and top-down. While tayo naman, the opposite, mga NGOs, maliliit lang tayo sa iba't ibang maliliit na lugar. So, ang question is, paano yung scale? I think we cannot discuss that in abstract, because the reality is, well, when you have China centralized, but you have a political party at saka you have a capable state. Sa Pilipinas, part of the reason why I think more neoliberal thinking tends to dominate for a long while is because ang tingin ng economists, hindi naman sila ganung puro privatization, deregulation. Hindi. Sabi nga sa akin that time when we were together in the cabinet ni Philip Vidalia, sabi niya, Ed, wala akong problema na hindi naman ako parang bureaucracy. Pero sabi niya, one of the scarcest resource in the Philippines are good bureaucrats. So, but if you put too much power there and they make a mistake, ang laki ng tama.
Tama sa bayan.
Failures, kahit markets also fail, pero at least parang mas kukonti. So, ako personally, so hindi na ito general theory, kundi I really think the reality of the Philippines is that over the years, hindi naman tayo nakapag-build ng isang capable central state. Talagang weak, no? So, part of the solution is dalawa. We pursue this decentralization kasi kung minsan hindi kaya sa national or even regional level, pero may mga capable sa province or city level or cluster. That's one.
Yes.
And the other is what is more advocated by mainstream economists. Siguraduhin mong maghanap ng appropriate private public sector partnership. So hindi simpleng bahala na ang private minimum state, hindi rin naman parang super regulatory. So again, it will be a case-to-case basis because especially when it comes to agriculture. I remember the regional director of DA whom I talked to 2 months ago in Region 12. Sabi niya, Ed, ang agriculture, dalawa yan. It should be science-based, but it is also site-based. Kasi kahit yung bagyong sinasabi mo, may iba talaga nadadali ng bagyo. May iba naman hindi masyado. Iba yung natural resource endowment, iba rin. So, the reality in the Philippines is unlike, although you want this big scale and there should be this overall plan, I think in terms of implementation, it will have to be, well, more
localized.
Specific province, but it doesn't have to be naman barangay, town. That's why unlike others sa galing sa progressive tradition at opposition noon at nung pinupost din na Digong yung federalism ganyan. Ako personally sabi ko, pwede naman basta na, maayos lamang ang pag-uusap. Kasi talagang iba-iba ang regions, iba-iba ang
Character.
natural developments, iba ang
Yes.
priority. For example, obviously, iba ang rice-producing regions compared to others. Iba ang mas fruits and vegetables. So I think that's one. The diversity of in the Philippines is one reality that's parang we have to deal with. The secondly is that the relative weakness pa rin ng the capacity of the public sector. Having said that, siyempre, one is to build that up. The other is, in the meantime, which is I think happening, there are a lot of private sector players who are saying now, okay, if that is the reality, maybe we just have to exercise a role beyond simple profitability and giving returns to our investors. We have to take on a little bit of more social nation building type of and you can see that with some of it has happened already in infrastructure. They do it. They also want to make money, but it is not just driven by that. They realize that they have to fill the gap that public financing and public capability cannot address. I think ang contentious issue dyan, which is I personally am unresolved about that, is kung parehong Filipino private sector, Filipino public sector, lesser ang issue. But when private sector comes in and say, yung foreign public sector magaling eh. For example, darating dito ang Thai big agricultural investors because they are really much better than that. Ninenervyos ngayon yung iba na, tayo muna, siguraduhin ba natin they will have some element of nation building or this is simply, they'll make their money wherever they can make money. So may ganong angle, especially when it comes later to ownership of land. But I think right now, as you said, as you asked me, dapat bang we go the way of centralization? Ako personally, I think I would rather look at the appropriate scaling up sa level ng hanggang probinsya, hanggang region. Now, what's to be centralized? I think that's financing is a big issue, no? And there obviously public financing and direct financing plus incentives is mahalaga. Infra, alam naman natin 'yan, no? Because talagang smart climate, smart agriculture and all that needs not only the physical infra but needs a lot of this ICT including information. Ako, ang isang weakness natin, ang hina ng Philippine Statistics Authority. Very limited ang kanilang sampling at slow yung iteration. Hindi pwede yung ang data mo on production and market ay every semester or every year. Hindi pwede. And if you do it through the old tedious way na, and yet we already have the technology. We can do big data. But of course, it can only be as good kung desidido kang to feed it, no, and collect. But I think that would be one that hindi magagawa ng private sector. Makakatulong sila. But it should be a government decision na siguraduhin ng ating, ito na lang sugar or even rice, debate lagi, ilan ba talaga? Ano ba talaga ang production? Ano nga ba talaga ang demand? And when you ask them, we ask them, no, PSA, sinabi nila, sorry na lang, talagang we have to review and improve our sampling and also the cycle, the rapidity of getting the data right because you have to be timely. Sabi nga nila sa fertilizer, ibibigay mo tapos na natanim na, useless, no? It's not just a matter of quantity, it's a matter of the time intervention, no?
Tsaka in terms of creating value, para if it's always delayed, what value does it have? Kung your statistics are a year old or 'di ba? And this is food, this is lalo na ngayon post-pandemic, it's even more the relevance of it has to be really, siguro every month at the minimum, 'di ba?
Dapat
at the nakikita
Pero
natin
I can give you an example na hindi ganun ka sophisticated, but
Yes.
where the value of information was great, no? During the brief time I was there in the secretaryship ni Prof. Alcala, one time, some of the NGOs I was working with, nando sa border ng Davao at saka North Cotabato, sinabi na, Ed, arami ditong mga IP, kaliwat kanan, panahon ng harvest, yung aswete, ano, para bagang arami-rami, murang-mura, mga wala pang 40 pesos ang kilo. At ngayon, we contacted some of the main traders in Divisoria. Sabi namin, kailangan ba nyo ng aswete? Marami ba kayong kailangan? Oo, sabi na, nag-i-import pa kami mula Vietnam eh. O,
Wow.
talaga? Sabi namin, kung makaka-aggregate kami ng aswete, magkano ang bili ninyo? Sabi nila, 90 pesos per kilo. Ha? Tapos, kung marami, tonelada, papadala namin ng truck. Alam mo, yung isang grupo kakilala ko, ang ginawa niya, sabi sa mga, iba itong IP, iba pa out of school, sabi niya, sige, kolektahin yung lahat, ilang tonelada, bagsakan rito, bibili namin ng 60 pesos per kilo. Na binili na ngayon ng taga-Divisoria ng 90 pesos per kilo. Kumita lahat. Tapos sabi pa nila, alam mo, mas maganda yung aswete. Mas maganda mapula yan kaysa doon sa Vietnam at mabebenta namin sa Jollibee. Maliit na bagay, pero it was a matter of information. No?
Yes.
Hindi sila nag-uusap. Pangalawa, we asked them also, ano ba talagang ini-import nyo? That means may market at may demand.
Right.
Ang sabi niya, munggo. Ganong karami? 300,000 metric tons a year. Tapos sabi ko, munggo lang yan. In between the rice. Simple lang ang sagot sa amin. Sino makakapagbigay sa amin ng ganong karaming tonelada ng munggo? So yun ang sinasabi kong, if you get the demand information and you can start with, yung demand is hindi lamang based on data because ini-import na nga, nangangahulugan kailangan rito. Then we can guide the production or look at saan na may production na increase it. Isa yon. By the way, recently had an interesting meeting sa Bicol. May isang old program nung Angat Buhay ni OVP,
Yes.
Interesting na kinento niya, 2017 yata, 2018, ginather niya yung mga poorer farmers in Camarines Sur at saka yung Metro Naga Chamber of Commerce sa isang maliit na workshop na sinabi, simple lang, tanong niya, ano ang top 10 mga agricultural products na binibili ninyo? At sa mga farmer, ano ang top 10 agriculture tinatanim ninyo? Pagkatapos ng workshop, walang nag-match.
Oh
Ang
my.
una, top na gusto ng mga may demanda from the malls, from the fast food, from the kalamansi. Pangalawa, sili, gano'n. Ang top naman sa farmers, talong. Ang layo ng diferensya. Tapos, tinanong nila, kalamansi, hindi nila maisip. Ako, inisip ko rin, kalamansi sa Mindoro yan. Or, bakit ang raming kalamansi? Ang una raw nag-call, yung bigs, yung parang isang local McDo type,
Yes.
Ba't yung kailangan napakaraming kalamansi? Para sa iced tea. Tapos hanggang ngayon, sabi ni Lenny, because he was the one giving a talk, hanggang ngayon, yung demand lang ng kalamansi sa Naga, ng mga fast food at ng mga malls, hindi pa ma-meet ng farmers ng Kamsur. Dahil yung iba, sabi nila, bihasa yung diversified for their self-use. Pero walang nagbibigay kasi nervyos, baka baratin and all that. Pero ang point niya, isang papel natin, both NGOs, LGUs, and even national government, kung minsan simple lang na pwede ba nating pagtagpuin yung dalawa and then tulungan yung kulang. So, sabi ko,
fill in the gaps, tapos
pwede naman pala Pwede naman pala.
Yes. Yeah. Grabe, Ed. Alam mo, sobrang kulang nitong time natin. We are in our last 5 minutes. But
Okay lang.
siguro, Grabe, no? It was a very animated discussion, and it seems talagang, from what you were saying, paparaphrase ko lang, imagine mo yun, no? Yung simpleng need lang ng isang community. Naga pa lang yon. May production, top 10, hindi nagmamatch. So it just goes to show you how much more work we need to do in the entire country, di ba? Pero of course, yung sinasabi mo kanina, trying to localize it, clusterize it at let's say, provincial or regional level, it's possible, di ba? Pero ito na, we're down to the last, please share with us what do you think would be the most, suggestion, the most, sabihin na nating relevant suggestion to government and all the stakeholders. Ano na to? Last few minutes natin. Sige,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, addressing the issue of rural development, matagal na itong usapin dati na there have been moves na kung pwede ba, in one form or the other, doesn't have to be merged into one agency, pero closer collaboration between DAR, DA, and DNR under the ambit of rural development or sustainable rural development. Kasi masyadong nakasplit yung tatlo. Equity, ownership, ito, production, marketing, saka yung sustainability. So I think that's one. So at the public sector, kasi nga, to rationalize or to make more efficient sana yung collaboration nitong 3 rural development agencies. Iba pa yung dagdag ng funding, etc. And in particular, I think when it comes to the issue of coconut, the same thing eh. May agrarian reform issue yan, may productivity issue, may sustainability issue, pati DTI comes in. Since the president has decided na for a while, wala pa siyang makita overall taga-kumpas, ay siya yung pwede yun because at least pag pinagsama mo yung tatlo, walang primus inter pares yan. Ngayon siya, pwede niyang tawagan yung tatlo, pwede ba mag-usap tayo? Ganyan. Bakit mahalaga yon? Not just among the 3, kundi yung si Digong left behind an ego on. Seryosohin na nga natin ang devolution. And Agri was one of the first that devolved in addition to health and social welfare. No? At marami namang sa galing pook sa mga awards na I have evaluated, marami namang bukas. So I think people are critical of the fact na the president has no much background knowledge on rural development and agri at marami pa siyang issues, ay bakit niya tututukan? I don't think he can tutok in that one, but he can exercise habang siya ang nandyan. Pwede mang pag-usapin mo ng gusto talaga yung tatlo at ayusin na talaga ng national agency ito at local government. Gayon, target na yan because we cannot afford a parang long discussion analysis, another World Bank parang mission to assess. Maraming alam na natin na dapat gawin. Ang problema yung execution and that needs leadership. Ang leadership, initially, formal leadership. Sino ang nasa pwesto talaga? Ano? Pangalawa, I think for us, ako naman, kahit na alam naman a lot of us came from an opposition, ganun. Pero civil society organizations na we have closer to the ground, we are willing to work with the government of the day. Basta bukas siyang makipag-usap. At wag akalaing tayo puro na lang, subcontractors o puro yes. We can offer our positive feedback. They should be open to participation. And in local areas na bukas ang government sa ganyan, ang ganda, nagbo-boom because the private sector needs the CSOs to do the organizing and the aggregating nga eh. But the private sector, naman na nating CSO, matuto na tayo mag-work with the corporations kasi dati ilang tayo eh, CSO and government lang. I think there has to be something from our end. So, do we need more enabling policies for that? Not really. It's really more a deliberate maybe some policy pronouncement or some rendahan mo yung masyadong ninenervyos yan na pag critical ay puro na agad yan, opposition or subversive or what. The rhetoric of whole of government and whole of nation approach, seryosohin na natin. especially
Tama.
in relation to not just rural development in general, but to the urgent issues of food security. Alam mo, all the figures are scary, na baka toward the last months of this year,
Exactly.
hindi lamang supply, but prices will shoot up. Alam mo, sabi nga nila, play on words ng iba, Ed, maikli ang gap between hungry and angry.
That's true.
Ayaw naman natin yan. Sabi mo nga dito, we are all wanting to build a nation that we want to live in and we have hope in for the future. But for that, we have to address the people, to reassure the people, may ginagawa naman at may mangyayari. Kasi sa simula, skeptical, wait and see. And we have to deliver some initial moves that are decisive and clear and addresses these core issues of ensuring food availability, affordability, and safety. And find a way to collaborate among national agencies and local government. And then sa side naman natin, mag-commit tayo na CSOs and private sector can work together for that. It's parang masyadong simpleng advice lang, pero
Yeah.
mahirap daw. Pero kaya naman may mga karanasan naman.
Institution, parang whole of government, whole of the nation, diba, approach. Lahat, stakeholders So anyway, nako Ed, it's really, we should have more time. I hope I can invite you again in the show. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your ideas as usual. It's always been a pleasure to pick your brains. Simula pa nung magkasama tayo sa DA. We were with the rice self-sufficiency.
Oo nga pala minsan, di tayo nag-meet.
Okay, Prosi. So, I
awards,
remember yung
nice productivity.
Kay Nani, Secretary Nani also. We were working together. So it's always been a pleasure listening to you and learning all the time. So Ed, this is about all the time that we have. I will now thank you on behalf of our viewers, on behalf of the show Para sa Bayan. Everybody, that has been Ed Dela Torre, who is now spending his holidays with his grandchildren. So kinuha natin siya from the vacation. So thank you, Ed. Thank you so much. Mga Pilipino dyan, thank you for listening to Para sa Bayan. That has been episode 18 on rural reconstruction in the Philippines. Good night, everyone, and God bless you all. Bye-bye. Ed, thank you. See you.
Maraming salamat.
Okay, God bless you.